Good afternoon, Lerato.
Afternoon, Dave.
Thank you for joining us for after 3 days of consultative selling training at Mercuri International. Just for the sake of our audience, would you like to just explain to us what does your company do?
I'm from a fairly large company. It's African Explosives Chemicals Industry, which is in short for AECI, and we mainly have 17 subsidiaries within the group. And our main focus is mining, water process, food sedatives, chemical specialties, and I think that's our main focus within the business. So we've got footprint within Africa, we've got footprint in New Zealand, Ghana, Chile, so we quite fairly big within our line of business.
Our customers keep telling us how difficult the market circumstances are. We see cheap imports coming in, offering or claiming to offer at least exactly what the local companies does, and it's not always the truth. It then depends on the salespeople to explain to their customers the difference between the imports and your products. After the 3 days, how well do you feel that your salespeople are equipped to fight that battle?
I've had to sit in on what we call the sales day, and from the feedback that we normally get there, I've had to actually have a good view of where our salespeople are, and it's a pretty good feedback that we get, and we are able to identify if there are any gaps where we should focus on in terms of training. And I believe that fact that we still do business with Mercuri as our preferred sales initiative training provider has a good impact on our business, because we are able to develop our sales team effectively to ensure that we secure the good business deals with still existing clients and obtaining new clients.
Some companies put a lot of emphasis on building knowledge. At Mercuri, we feel that it's rather important to build, first of all, the sales competence, and then secondly, the sales confidence of salespeople. How was that addressed during your 3 days?
It's quite important for me. I'm not a salesperson, like you've just said. I'm mainly based within the HR field. But having been here for the past 3 days has brought me to a point of awareness, a point of my knowledge has quite improved within the 3 days, not only within HR, but having to put myself in a sales position. And the feedback that I've received from my colleagues throughout the 3 days is that I'm actually a good potential salesperson.
Okay.
I might not know it because I've always thought of an HR person. So sales is possibly my next point of take.
Well, the one thing that you've certainly discovered through this is that sales is not all about you were born into it.
True.
But it's so much skill involved, and skill can of course always be taught and can be acquired. Have you, if you look at the colleagues around you, the real salespeople, have you seen skill and confidence improvement in them?
Certainly. The few that I interact with on a regular basis, those are actually the ones that have been identified as high flyers within the company, and they are the few that will always be the top performers within the sales. So there's always room for other salespeople within the business to reach those levels, but the fact that we still focus on development, creating competence and confidence, so that shows that we are taking interest in our employees and what they deliver to our clients.
The facilitator, of course, always plays a big role because it's not just knowledge transfer, but skill development. What is your opinion of the facilitator that you had for the last 3 days?
The facilitator that we had for 3 days was quite knowledgeable, and case studies that were given throughout the 3 days were quite relevant. It was quite relatable, and her sense of in my view, I would say she's a subject matter expert. So that makes a huge difference in delivering your sessions. So yeah, it gets you to a point where you're able to make your content much relatable to your audience. And that's what she has achieved in the last 3 days.
Thank you. The technologies that you've seen we use, the fishbowl
Yes.
in which we're sitting right now,
Yes.
the cameras, how has that been introduced and used in your process?
I think the way it was introduced was mainly from a point of some of the case studies that we had to view in the sessions that we did with our facilitator. So that has brought a new learning element to how the training is delivered. So having to also do orals where we do case studies it's a good approach. It's a good way of making learning interesting. It's a good approach into making the audience understand what their potential gaps are and if there is any development that has happened or learning that has happened in the last 3 days. So during our exercises, that's where I've had to identify where my shortfalls are and where I have improved, considering that I'm not normally a day-to-day salesperson, but because there is an element of sales that happens in my line of work also. So that has been a good learning that has happened. Yeah.
Overall experience, 3 days of training, you've invested in it. What are your thoughts overall?
2 thumbs up. It was a good decision to do this. Yeah, I went in very skeptical purely because I thought this is purely for sales. Not knowing that I would be where I am right now with in terms of thinking, self-awareness, a different way of thinking altogether. So that has been a good learning.
Great. Of course, decision makers like yourself always ask the question about the stickability, the sustainability of training such as this. What are your thoughts on that?
The one interesting element that I found particularly important with doing the consultative selling with our facilitator was the fact that there is an assessment form that one can make use of. So I think that's an important tool to make use of. So given the fact that it's not always normal to get that assessment form done on a day-to-day or from any other training course that we would usually partake on. So the fact that that was one point of addition to this specific course, I feel like it's one that we could potentially go ahead with introducing in our business. It's a good course.
Lerato, thank you very much for joining us and
Thank you
sharing
so
your
much,
thoughts.
Dave.
I really appreciate that.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.